If you have endometriosis and you've been told that this is a you issue and your partner is just kind of there to support you from the sidelines, this episode is for you. Hi, I'm Dr. Jane Levesque, and this is the Natural Fertility with Dr. Jane podcast, where we help couples uncover the real reasons behind their fertility struggles. And today I want to talk to you about why it's so important to involve your partner fully in your fertility workup, even if you've been told it's just a you issue. Like you have endometriosis. I'm going to share a real story that shows how much we can miss when we don't involve the partner from the get-go. So here's how I want you to start thinking about endometriosis. Endometriosis is a full body inflammatory immune system condition. It is often associated with some kind of microbial imbalance. And I say that there's always some kind of an infection. Now, as soon as people say or hear the word infection, they think of an active infection and being sick, something that they need antibiotics for. But it is often not what I see in endometriosis. You might need antibiotics, but we need to figure out where that infection is sitting. And this is where the deeper testing comes into play. So I'm not testing for things like chlamydia or HSV, or you still want to rule those things out, but most people are going to test negative for those things. What I am looking for is the subtle microbial imbalances within the woman, whether that's the vaginal microbiome, the gut microbiome, sometimes the uterine microbiome, sometimes it's in the blood, or the subtle inflammation or cholesterol or blood sugar dysregulation that's telling me that there is low-grade chronic inflammation that's probably driven by some kind of microbial imbalance or a toxin. So maybe that's yeast or heavy metals. And I've had literally examples of all of those in my practice, where a woman with endometriosis and her endometriosis was caused by high levels of lead versus high levels of candida versus ureaplasma versus chronic BV. My goal is to figure out why you have endometriosis. I think a woman with endometriosis is very sensitive to her environment, and I think she's actually responding appropriately. It's just that we live in a world that's very toxic and a world that's very dismissive when it comes on the conventional side. They'll simply tell you that there's nothing going on, it's just the way that you are, it's just genetics. But here's where the partner is really important. If you and your partner live together, you cook for one another, you touch, you're intimate together, then you are constantly sharing your microbiome and you're exchanging it. And it is often when we test our partners, we see a lot of similarities in their microbiomes. Of course, we see some differences because genetically you and your partner are different, but we see so many similarities because of how similar your environment is. So when we don't involve the partner from day one, when a woman has endometriosis, I find it's almost impossible to really move the needle forward. And I'm going to use this example to help you understand why it's so important. So this is the pattern that I see over and over again. You have the diagnosis, endometriosis, and maybe it's PCOS or premature ovarian insufficiency or diminished ovarian reserve or an autoimmune condition. And every appointment, every lab, it's all about you. And then your partner really comes to support you, and he holds your hands, and he is there with you making the changes as much as it makes sense for him. But no one is really looking at him and what he is bringing to the environment and to the picture. And often what I see is the male have had one sperm analysis, maybe two, blood work that's been done 2 years ago, that's really outdated at this point. And he's just kind of like quietly in the background because things are okay, they're not that bad. He still has symptoms, they're just not as bad as yours, so he tends to just kind of go in the background. Now, what I will say too, even if your partner says he doesn't have any symptoms, I'll find something. If you live in 2026, you have something. Are you aware of it or are you not? Now, I'm not here to force anyone to work through their things. The partner definitely has to, both you and your partner definitely have to want to be here. But to just say that I don't have anything, I think part of that is ignorance and part of that is lack of awareness. And I'm saying this with a lot of like love and gratitude, not blaming you like you are ignorant. But I just think you go to the doctor and the doctor constantly tells you that you're fine, there are no issues. And then you get used to living with your symptoms, that you have just defined them as normal. And then when you come to someone like me and I'm like, what about this? And they go, I do have an extra 20 pounds. Oh yeah, I'm not sleeping through the night. Oh yeah, I am a little bit tired. Oh yeah, I do have this rash, but it's just been there for forever. So I just don't even think about it. That's what I mean by everybody has something. It's just, are you actually looking at it? And do you know that there is a solution to it? And do you know that this is actually your body telling us that something is wrong? So the common approach is that women get all the attention. She goes through the surgeries. She does all the diet and lifestyle changes. She's taking all the supplements. And then again, the male partner, because his sperm is fine, he doesn't need to do anything. And I genuinely think that the system just reinforces this. And I think the problem is that we are really underestimating the environment that you guys are living in, both you and your partner, is setting your ability to heal or to stay the same and to stay stuck. So changing the environment is kind of our biggest lever, but changing the environment means not just changing your food, your diet, your lifestyle. Like, it's literally changing the way that you live, which is very difficult to do without your partner unless you genuinely want to grow apart, which I think most people don't. They want to grow closer together, which is why we need to bring the partner on board. There's so many studies showing how we exchange the microbiome with our partner, not just through intimacy or through kissing, but through touch, through sharing food, cooking for one another, even just breathing and being in the same environment. We are constantly sharing our environment, our microbiome. We're also sharing things like your hormones. So cortisol, testosterone, estrogen. I've seen, I'm sure you have noticed this as a woman, for example, when your partner is really stressed out, you could feel his stress, and vice versa. I mean, the men typically don't feel our stress as much, or they're just not as expressive of it. They could tell that you're not doing well, and they really feel for you, but they might not be saying it out loud to you. We are sharing our hormones. And when a woman is pregnant, the hormones for the male will change because of how strong her hormones are. So I've seen a male that's on TRT, how that changes the hormones for her as well. So we're not just changing the microbiome, we're also changing, sharing these molecules in different hormones, whether it's good or bad. You are sharing all of it. Now, I'm going to just dive right into the example because I think it's the easiest way to make my point. So she had endometriosis, surgery. Now it's recurring. She's obviously frustrated with that, and they've been trying to conceive for 3 years. He's had one sperm analysis done. He did not do it correctly because nobody told him to do it well, but the test was done 14 days abstinence instead of 2 to 3 days, which basically means I just cannot even look and interpret those results because his volume is probably going to be off, the debris is going to be high, the motility is going to be off. Like, it's just old sperm that has been damaged in the testicles for too long. So we can't even read that sperm analysis. And then he hasn't had blood work done probably for 2 or 3 years. So now we look at, I sit down and I say, tell me all the symptoms that you have. And the big things that he's struggling with is low energy and he has anxiety. We go a little bit into the anxiety, and it turns out it has everything to do with basically losing control. So when he feels like he doesn't have control and he's stuck in a certain situation, almost like a claustrophobia type situation, this is when it can escalate into something even like a panic attack. So again, to me, that's not normal, especially when the masculine energy is supposed to be really grounding and really confident. If you think about the masculine energy and how they're doers and, like they're supposed to go out and do things, and the hunting and the, bringing the food back and the protectors. So when I see that energy be anxious, I'm quite concerned because it's not a normal, I don't say it's not a normal thing, but women tend to lean more towards that anxiety and overthinking in future. But for the masculine energy, I really like to see it grounded. So that's clue number one, that there's probably something going on within the gut, and the serotonin and the dopamine levels are probably low. And then there's probably some child issue, trauma, something around control and not having control and feeling like he's stuck, that we can unpack a little bit later. But then let's go into the next symptom, and it's this low energy. So my first question to him was like, when was the last time he put his energy as like a 5 out of 10? So my next question to him was, when was the last time you had a 10 out of 10 energy? And he said, honestly, I don't remember. Even as a kid, I remember being tired. It's like, that's interesting. At 33 years old, you have a 5 out of 10 energy, and he still pushes through because, like, who can just lay on the couch all day? He has a business to run. He's still doing stuff. But it's like he doesn't feel like he actually has that energy internally. And then coffee makes him anxious, so he can't have caffeine. And, you shouldn't be this tired at 33, especially when you don't have kids. And you can sleep for 9 hours, and he does. And he can power down for a nap for 2 hours during the day on the weekends and still be tired. So this is a big signal and a big concern that there's probably something going on with the mitochondria. Now, mitochondria are the powerhouse of your cells. They help us make energy. They help you make hormones, detoxification, sperm quality, and DNA within that sperm is going to be really important. Brain function, nervous system function. So I want to understand, where is this fatigue coming from? Now, this is before we even run any testing. We are running lots of testing, and those results will come in soon. But just from a standpoint of like, let me talk to this individual and let me understand what's actually going on. So now I go, well, let's talk about, some birth history and family history to help me understand, why is this energy so low? He is the youngest of 3. His mom had 3 babies roughly a year apart. So that kind of spacing almost guarantees nutrient depletion from mom and to less going around for each baby. So as a naturopathic doctor and natural fertility expert, I support couples through pregnancy and postpartum. And most women need about 2 years to feel fully recovered, because the first year you're breastfeeding. And then if you're very, very specific with your nutrients and sleep, and you know exactly what you need, within 6 months, you could try again after feeding for 12 months, but you have to be stopped feeding at 12 months, not like, oh, the baby's at 12 months, I'll keep breastfeeding and then I'll just start trying. And lots of really good research coming out that we don't actually should be feeding babies past 13 to 15 months, depending on if you have a boy or a girl, and that it's actually way too much of a detoxification process. And we're just dumping essentially toxins into the baby, and the babies don't need it from a nutrient standpoint. If you're introducing really great whole foods, that's a topic for another day. But point being is, she had her babies really close together, so she was likely still breastfeeding when she got pregnant, which is a huge depletion. And then she did that again, and it's amazing that she was able to do that again. But here's where I think most people get it wrong. They'll say, well, my mom had no issues conceiving. Why do I have issues? And if I look at that story, and there's, a Dutch study that was done trigenerationally on women who were pregnant during a famine, and they had, really low nutrition. It wasn't the women that had the babies. It wasn't their daughters that had issues. It was their grandkids that had issues. And we forget that fertility is this generational issue, and even quad generational, as we have more studies come out to show that. So just because his mom didn't have anything doesn't mean that now he is not going to have any issues, because you see the history, okay? And this is just one component. So having 3 babies in a row like that is very, very fast and very, very depleting for the woman, and it generally means there's less to go around for each baby. The second point is, she was a smoker. Now, she claimed that she didn't smoke during pregnancies, but she did between and after. He literally remembers always smelling like cigarettes. So he's the last baby, likely fewer nutrients, plus the heavy secondhand smoke and toxin exposure from day one. This isn't about like blaming or shaming. I genuinely think we as humans just do the best that we can with the information that we know. But we also have to zoom out and go, this isn't just the way that his body was built. It was that he had really high toxic load and really low nutrient levels from the start. And this is why we need to run deeper testing so I can see what are we really working with, and what do we really need to focus on to optimize his energy levels, get rid of his anxiety, and then obviously optimize his sperm quality. Because when a woman has any compromises to the egg quality, so whether that's endometriosis or PCOS or POI or DOR, we want to make sure that the sperm is as optimal as possible, because the egg has the capacity, or should have the capacity, to fix any DNA damage within the sperm. And a lot of the times when that sperm is okay, but really it's barely in range for IVF threshold as opposed to optimal for natural fertility, and she has some egg quality issues, we tend to not be able to have the fertilization and the proper embryo development, because it's just, there isn't enough energy that the egg already has, and we need that sperm to be super, super optimal. So then the egg is not overwhelmed with all of this DNA damage. And he's never even had a DNA damage, a DNA fragmentation test, because that's just not something that's quote unquote required, especially for a young dude. So they started trying when he was 30, he's 33 now. At 30 years old, unfortunately, clinics are not looking, and they kind of go, you're still young. And, to be honest, they want to try to avoid the clinic. And so, of course, that's a problem. We need to start asking for that testing, and it needs to be available to people, not just because they want to do IVF, but because they want to optimize these things naturally. So if we zoom out and we look at that, now I go, okay, there's something going on with his mitochondria, and there's likely some toxic load and mitochondrial dysfunction and nutrient deficiencies that we need to address to improve his symptoms and to improve his fertility. Now, when we look at that and we look at her at the same time, we'll be able to see what she's picking up on from him and what's preventing her from being able to heal properly. And, what he's really struggling. Because I think when I bring the male up and I really ground the male and bring his energy up, I actually see that the female relaxes more, because now she's not worried about him. And she can just focus on herself, and he can support her as well. That I tend to see the woman come up a lot faster when the masculine energy is very grounded in this, kind of well-rounded, healthy microbiome and, toxic load, all of that jazz is dealt with. I see a lot of really big improvements. So even though endometriosis might live in your body, remember that fertility is a two-person job. And endometriosis is a reflection of something in your environment. Your partner is a big part of your environment. And the sooner we bring him on board, the more you guys will feel like a team. And I often say that you should feel like you're the little family, and then you're trying to bring, the next member of the family in. But separating you two through that fertility journey and just focusing on the female often doesn't do enough. And so we have to bring that male partner in, because you share the microbiome, you share the stress, you share your other hormones, and it's on and on we go. And like I said, I've seen women who have really big endo cases, but the partner is just not willing to come on board, whether he doesn't think that he needs to, or everybody around him, the conventional system, told him that he doesn't need to. I always say, just show me the data for the men. When I see the data and when the men see the data, it's really easy to go, do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this symptom? You could see all of that through the lab. And whether that's, you're starting to lose your hair, do you have acne on your back? Do you have a hard time sleeping? And when the men can match the data to their symptoms, then they become really motivated. And like I said, the whole household lifts, meaning the woman and the man. And I think we can get a lot closer, a lot faster to that baby we're trying to bring into our family. So If you feel like you're doing all the work, all the testing, all the surgery, and your partner has, barely had a proper workup done, you feel like you're carrying this on your own, in a way, and you don't really have to. And this is why in my practice we work with couples. So if you want my team and me to look at both of you through this fertility lens, not just you, not just endometriosis, but understand why you have endometriosis, go ahead and fill out a short application down below. We will review it. And if we can help, we'll show you what the next steps are. I hope you found this episode helpful. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.